Hey Eagles fans, this is Mike Kaye from NJ Advanced Media, and welcome to the No Huddle Show podcast, where we discuss anything and everything Philadelphia Eagles. You can read our content on NJ.com/Eagles, bookmark that, and you can subscribe to our exclusive Eagles Insider text service, where we'll break news, give you insider observations, and provide in-depth analysis. Through Eagles Extra, you can send questions and comments directly to us, and we'll respond to your phone. With me today, as always, is my fellow Eagles beat reporter, Chris Franklin. Today we're going to discuss the Eagles' kind of minor move at the deadline. We'll recap a little bit of the Lions game, even though we kind of figured the results wouldn't be as overwhelming as, a normal win would be. And then also we'll get into the Chargers matchup that's taking place this Sunday at the Link. Can the Eagles get their first win at home this season? But before we do that, Chris, how you doing?
Hey, buddy. I'm doing all right, man. Doing well. How about yourself?
I'm here. I'm here. So we should get into, kind of the Detroit thing. We didn't do a preview podcast. We didn't really do a follow-up podcast because, to me, we were doing a lot of traveling. Every time we go through security or we get stopped with our microphones, we just figured we'd sit through the trade deadline. If anything happens, then we would record a pod. Something happened, but I don't know if it was worth rushing to the podcast. So what we wanted to do is kind of mishmash everything together. Let's really quickly recap the Lions game. If you've been living under a rock, the Eagles discovered the running game with Miles Sanders sideline, used Boston Scott and Jordan Howard to crush the spirits of the Detroit Lions. The offensive line played extremely well. The defense also played pretty well, almost pitched a shutout until a garbage time touchdown by Jared Goff later on in the game. They finished 44-6. Everybody was hunky-dory. Nick Sirianni was all smiles. Went out of his way to be cheery this week. Jonathan Gannon had a pretty nice press conference. All the players had fun anecdotes to say. It was about as good of a week as you could possibly have outside of week one, I guess, from a feeling standpoint. Then again, I also don't get the vibe that Eagles fans are buying into it, that the Eagles are quote-unquote fixed. Chris, give me your quick thoughts on the Detroit Lions blowout.
Well, I think they went a far way to try to develop their identity. I know everybody says, well, it's the Lions. They're probably one of the worst teams that's been assembled in a long time. But I thought that was the kind of game this team needed in order to try to find who they really were. And you saw that they developed that with the run game. Lo and behold, that thing that you can do when you just hand the ball off. It's like the Eagles, they stuck with it. I mean, Nick Sirianni said he wanted to have 5 of his 7 first plays be running plays, and lo and behold, it worked out. And I think it was very important for that offensive line, especially too. He said he relied on Jason Kelce and Lane Johnson. Those guys were telling him to keep the ball on the ground, and he listened. And we saw what happened. I mean, even without Miles Sanders, Boston Scott did very well, and Jordan Howard came up, elevated from the practice squad, did very well with that. I think defensively, it was a more aggressive Jonathan Gannon, which was nice to see. I mean, we saw a couple. We saw the double A gap blitz finally. We saw that. We saw safety blitzes, and they brought different looks and different pressures. And I think that was a nice way to build on, especially if they're trying to build toward, especially with this back end of the schedule, and they're trying to build something toward this future. That's the type of game where you can start to turn things around and really try to find yourself and become that aggressive team that the players have been clamoring for. So overall, it was a nice win, even though a lot of people say it was just the Lions.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something you can build off of with a young team. Clearly, they were not sellers at the trade deadline. They actually turned out to be buyers, but they bought the right way. Before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about young Fletcher Cox, or I guess middle-aged in the NFL Fletcher Cox. Here's what I was hearing before the trade deadline. The Eagles were definitely willing to trade him. There's reports that they were aggressive in trading him. That was not what I was told. I was told that they were considering trading him. They did get some calls There were a couple of AFC teams that were very, very interested. At one point, late in the afternoon, it seemed like something was going to get done. It did not. Fletcher was happy to be here. They're staying together. I also broke earlier on the day before the trade deadline passed. The Eagles were not going to trade Andre Dillard away for nothing. My understanding was there were quite a few offensive tackle needy teams that did reach out, gauge some interest, but no one met the price that the Eagles wanted. I was told with Fletcher Cox, the asking price was a second-round pick. At least a second-round pick. With Andre Dillard, I would imagine, based on the conversations that I had, he could have been dealt for a third-round pick. I don't think his value was right there, especially at the trade deadline. So, that being said, the Eagles stayed put with their current roster for the most part. We'll get into the big roster move that they made on Wednesday, or the notable roster move they made on Wednesday. They then, literally, Chris and I had the Eagles stay put at the deadline thing. We waited 10 minutes. I told Chris, wait 10 minutes. He posts it, 4:12. There's a report that they had traded a 2022 6th-round pick to the Denver Broncos for Kay Vincent Jr. He was a contributor on LSU's 2019 national championship team, opted out last year due to COVID. Kind of a safety cornerback hybrid. He's very fast. He was a sprinter in college and in high school. Probably best fit for dime and nickel packages. What was your takeaway? Oh, before I get to that point, the reason why this made sense is they traded for a guy who has 3 years left on his contract after this season. He's sub 25. And by the way, you've got 11 draft picks already. At the time, the Eagles had 5 picks between the 6th and 5th rounds. There's a condition on this trade that the Broncos will get whichever 6th-round pick ends up being the lowest of the 2 6th-round picks that they own. They currently have a 6th-round pick from the Colts that they swapped with Matt Pryor, and a 7th-round pick during final cuts. They also have a 6th-round pick from the Jets that they got for Joe Flacco. Now, that 6th-round pick is actually originally from the Buccaneers, but there's a condition on that pick that if Joe Flacco plays a certain amount of time, it can become a 5th-round pick. So for right now, the Colts pick is being sent to an inventory standpoint. The Colts pick is being sent to the Broncos as of right now. Chris, now that I've got that convoluted thing out of the way, what was your take on the trade?
Well, you explained that sound like that scene in basketball where Al Michaels and Bob Costas were trying to discuss the playoff scenarios. That was just crazy. But at the trade, I could see what they're trying to do. I mean, when you look at when you look at the secondary for the future, I mean, Rodney McLeod's getting up there in age. You have Anthony Harris, who's on a 1-year deal. Steve Nelson is a free agent to be. Avonte Maddox is uncertain. He's playing well, so the price tag might be going up, and somebody might offer him a deal that the Eagles won't be willing to match. So they have to. What it looks like they're doing is trying to have insurance to stockpile all these corners to protect them. I mean, I think I like the versatility that Vincent brings. I think when you look at the speed that a lot of teams seem to be going with, a lot of speed and downfield when it comes to these sweeps, and when it comes to just not just clearing routes out, but just basically trying to chuck the ball downfield. I think it's whatever speed you can get, especially at that position, is beneficial. But now when you look, you have I don't know what the Eagles have seen. Vic Fangio has been talking to the Eagles saying, hey, I got to look at these cornerbacks and collected. But now you have Vincent from the Broncos. You got Mac McCain now, who they picked up off the Broncos practice squad. There's so much, like, they're really going with this youth movement. And then you had Tay Gowan, who you got from the Zach Ertz trade. They're really trying to protect themselves and insulate themselves in case they lose Maddox and or Nelson. So, I mean, I for what they had to give up, is worth taking a flyer on. I mean, they already had enough picks as well too. And then you got to figure with all those draft picks coming in, do they figure a lot of these potential draft picks they have? Do you figure that a lot of these guys aren't going to be able to sign, or just going to be heavy turnover? And then you got to think down the line with the cap implications. So I'm okay, especially if it's the lowest of the 6th round pick. I mean, it's worth taking a shot, and hopefully Vincent develops into a player.
Yeah, and you bring up McCain, you bring up Gowan, then there's Vincent. All three of those guys took off the COVID year. So I think their logic is, hey, these guys probably would have gone in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round had they played an extra year in college. They are fresh. Their legs are fresh. They haven't played in a while, but they can take in a year of coaching even if they're not really playing, and maybe that helps them. And next year's really their rookie deal, but they have the benefit of really experiencing what the NFL is all about. They've now been exposed to multiple systems, Gowan with the Cardinals, Mac McCain and Vincent with the Broncos. Look, they cut Brett Toth in order to keep Mac McCain. We were convinced Mac McCain was going to be the guy that was cut for Vincent. They clearly like all these corners, and now you have 4 rookie corners on this team. Zach McPherson, the 4th round pick. Mac McCain, who was an undrafted free agent who they signed week 1 off the Broncos practice squad. They were clearly paying attention to the Broncos preseason games. Vincent was the 7th round pick. Yes, they traded a higher pick without seeing him in the regular season, but they clearly like what they saw in the preseason. And then you got Tay Gowan, who in my opinion is really impressive physically. Like, you can see on the practice field, this dude's really, really long. He's very good with his arms. He had a pass breakup against the Lions in garbage time. Looks really fast and fluid. He could be a real legitimate player. He skipped the COVID year because he has a young daughter who I believe was born premature or has an illness. I'm trying. I don't remember which. You wrote about it, Chris. But I think it doesn't. They're human lottery tickets, right? If 2 of those guys hit, you're in good shape, and you haven't invested a 2nd or 3rd round pick in them. I think Darius Slay is going to be here at least next year. I think he's played extremely well. I think Avonte Maddox is a guy that they're probably wanting to re-sign, but with the nickel cornerback group, those contracts are all over the place. You probably want the market to set itself. With Steven Nelson, I really like what he's done. Maybe he re-signs to another 1-year deal. But then there's the chance that they put Zach McPherson on the field and they like what they see, or Tay Gowan emerges. They also have Andre Cheshire, and who's been a special teams ace, who's been the best gunner on the team. And then they have Josiah Scott, who they really like, who could be the fallback plan if they can't re-sign Avonte Maddox. So they have 9 corners. That's a lot of corners. I did a breakdown of the team right now. As of now, they haven't made a 53rd roster move. I'll get into why they're at 52 in a second. But right now, their roster has 20 defensive players, 3 special teams players, and 21 offensive players. That's wild, especially for an Eagles team that is so offensive forward. So yeah, that's wild. So they have a lot of corners, and they only really have, they have the 4 safeties. Anthony Harris is coming back from thumb and groin injuries. They've got Roddy McLeod, Kayvon Wallace just came back, Marcus Epps playing well. So their secondary is stocked. And what's crazy is they ended final cuts, I believe, with just 4 corners. I think it was just Darius Slay, Nelson, Maddox, and McPherson. And since then, they claimed Cheshire off waivers. They signed Mac McCain off the practice squad. They traded, and then they traded for these other corners. I mean, it's crazy. And Josiah Scott was on IR. So wild stuff. But let's get into kind of maybe the most controversial thing of the week for the Eagles, at least. Well, yeah, obviously for the Eagles this week. So they cut Eric Wilson. Eric Wilson was effectively benched for the game against Detroit. TJ Edwards is now the main middle linebacker. That worked out pretty well. He had 13 tackles, 2 for a loss, and a QB hit against the Lions. Played very, very well. So did Davian Taylor, actually. Eric Wilson, who was supposed to be known for his coverage ability, was horrific against the pass and the run. Nick Sirianni explained Monday that the benching was about roles. He said that TJ Edwards and Davian Taylor were going to play a lot and start. Alex Singleton was going to have a role on third down. And then they needed somebody who could play special teams, and Sean Bradley's leading the team in special teams tackle. So that's how they justified benching Eric Wilson. To me, I immediately called it out. I'm like, this guy's going to be cut within the week. They clearly tried to trade him at the deadline, got no takers. I wonder why. And then he was waived on Wednesday because all vested veterans, are now subject to waivers past the trade deadline. They gave him a partially guaranteed $2.75 million contract. If his contract gets claimed, good golly, Miss Molly, they're off the hook. So that was the thought process there. Alas, poor Eric Wilson. We didn't know him well. I thought he was going to be solid because of his background with Nick Rallis, the linebackers coach, and then obviously the similarities in systems between Mike Zimmer and Jonathan Gannon. But man, he might have been worse than Nate Gary. I don't know. I mean, rough stuff. But like on top of that too, look, it seems like the Eagles try all these linebackers and they never work out. Not only do they not pay them, they just don't work out. They cut LJ Fort to retain a comp pick. They cut Zach Brown because he was hating on Kirk Cousins and he's not very good. Jatavis Brown retired because he probably saw what was happening on last year's team, was like, peace, I'm out. And now you've got Eric Wilson. So what's your thoughts on Eric Wilson being cut and the linebacker group in general?
Well, I thought when you looked at him, when they signed him, it's like, all right, this makes sense. I thought with his speed and his athletic ability, I thought, especially if we were going to see some of those Zimmer-like blitz styles, he would be great because of his speed and his athleticism. And then if they're going to run that inverted cover 2 where he covers the middle of the field, he'd be great at it because he's got the speed once again to go cover it. And it just was rough. It was rough to watch at times. I mean, he was a nice guy. He had that positive vibe around him. We'd be putting the billboards up around the city and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, it comes down to what you're able to produce on the field. And he just wasn't able to do it. And I probably about 4 or 5 years, the Eagles should have probably made the move to switch to Edwards about 4 or 5 games ago because Edwards to me has been good. The question when it comes to Edwards is his coverage ability. And he's, from what I've seen so far, granted it was the Lions last week and a couple other things, he still is not that bad. He's still all right as a cover guy. And he'll be able to get you play like that, the hook part of the zone or seam part of the zone. I'm okay with him, especially early in the first or second down. And he does a great job diagnosing the runs. He's a sure tackler. And that was another thing that Eric Wilson did that was really tough. I think he had 7 missed tackles. You know what, Edwards, you're going to get a sure tackler. And then when you look at Davion Taylor now, you get more. He's starting to seem to get more and more in flow, catching the game a little bit more as well, too. He's running and diagnosing the plays a lot better now, too. So you get more snaps with those guys. Now, all of a sudden, you have at least 2 homegrown linebackers instead of going out and trying to sign these guys. You have 2 homegrown linebackers in your system now that could potentially, shore up that position for at least a year or two. So I'm really looking forward to see what Taylor's able to do, what Edwards will do. And you mentioned Bradley earlier. If he saw a little bit more towards the second half, he saw a little bit more run as well too, and he played the run well. So I'm really looking forward to see what these young linebackers, how they progress with this new opportunity they have for the rest of the season.
And their first opportunity, their second opportunity, I guess you could say, is the Chargers. So let's kind of get into them. Rashawn Slater, their first round pick, has been absolutely tremendous at left tackle. I'm almost going to say, why don't you put Ryan Kerrigan on him all day? So you can just waste him and then have Josh Sweat and Derek Barnett. Like, what? I mean, I think that's a logical way of doing things. They've got a decent offensive line. Justin Herbert's obviously very, very good. He was limited Wednesday with a right hand injury, which is his throwing hand. And it's about to be cold. And that's got me kind of being like, maybe the Eagles pull this off. wide receiver, they've got Mike Williams, who's a good deep threat slash jump ball player who I think is probably going to draw Steven Nelson. And then you've got obviously Keenan Allen, who I think is the most underrated player in the entire league. He's clearly going to draw Darius Slay if they decide to move him around. I would think that they would, mainly because Keenan Allen plays so much in the slot. Though they trust Avonte Maddox. And I think either way, the Eagles won't allow him to have a great game. And now, Austin Eckler is a guy who is kind of scary for this team. They've got to be able to tackle in the flat. They've got to be able to prevent yak. But they did that against the Lions and DeAndre Swift. So that's a good sign. On offense, the Eagles need to run the ball. This is a really poor run defense, but it's by design, as Brendan Staley kind of is like Jonathan Gannon, where he wants you to kind of run on them because he'd rather have that than deep passes. Their cornerback group is fine. But Derwin James, their safety, is incredible. So is Joey Bosa, their pass rusher. It's going to be really interesting to see what the Eagles dial up for this team. I expect a lot of screens, a lot of runs, a lot of under center stuff. What do you got, Chris?
Well, I'll start with this one, too. I remember it must have been a bruise, but when I was playing in Cecil County, I got basically my hand. It was early in the season. We were playing a spring ball, so you're playing in March. We were playing in March, and it was just a practice. And in the cold, that thing really, really hurts. I mean, it's tough when you're gripping the ball. It was. I hurt basically my non-throwing hand, but you still feel it. So when you're trying to protect the ball, when you're in the pocket and you got all those arms going around you, this could be this is one of those games where you need a defensive line to just get hits. Just hit them. If you get to them, that's great. Even better if you get a sack. But you just need to keep hitting him, especially on that hand, because I'll tell you right now, he's going to feel it. You can numb it up as much as you can, but he's going to feel that. And the more and more hits you get, there's more chance you get the fumbles and more turnovers, more chances to score the ball. So I think that's going to be one of the key things when it comes to the Eagles on that aspect. You brought up the Eckler and the yards after catch, and that's the main thing as well, too. He's a tough guy to bring down. You can't – and the one thing that you used to see with the Eagles, especially before the Lions game, was they would like to tackle up high. They can't do this against Eckler because Eckler's going to shake them off, and then the defenders will be looking at him 10, 15 yards down the field. They cannot tackle high in this game or try to launch a shoulder and think you're going to get them down that way. They have to actually wrap up on this one. Offensively, you got Joey Bosa going on the other side of the ball. This is one of the games where you want to run at him, wear him down early. And I think personally, when it comes to the game plan, it's going to be one of those things where, and you're going to love this because it's weather related, but there's that storm that's supposed to be coming. It's supposed to be it could be a little bit breezier or windier. So it can really, really affect this game. And it may force the Eagles to run the ball a little bit more. So especially against a defense that's given up more than 150 things, I want to say like 150 yards a game on the ground. This is tailor made for them. They show success. They can move the ball that way, but it's one of the things where Sirianni, if it doesn't work early, Sirianni has to stick with the run because I think he can wear this team down. But overall, I think after saying all that, personally, I think the Chargers are still going to win this game because since 2010, they have not lost to an NFC East team on the road. I think there's something like 5-0 in that span. So I think there's something about that, about the Chargers when they come east, even if it's Dallas, but when they come to the East Coast playing the Giants and Washington, whatever it is, they have the right answers to it. But I think I have the Chargers winning 20-17.
You know what? I've gone back and forth with this. I think it's going to be an extremely tight game. I'm going to go 24-23 Eagles. Here's why. Okay. Here's why. I do think the Eagles will run the ball more frequently, and more importantly, I think the play action plays will work a little bit better, even if they don't, just because of what they showed in Detroit. I think defensively, they will, blitz as much as they probably did against Detroit. I like what they did early on, especially with Marcus Epps on that first drive, setting the tone. They just need to be physical, and I think that's going to be very intriguing against a team like the Chargers, who's coming from the West Coast. Yes, it's a 4:00 game, I think the link will be a little bit more hyped because the Eagles are coming off a win. And look, I think that the Chargers are a finesse team similar to the Eagles. And I think when you get finesse versus finesse in cold weather, the team that's been preparing in that cold weather is typically going to benefit. I like the vibe of the practices this week, to be honest with you. There's something about it. I don't know. Maybe I'm just drinking the Lions Kool-Aid. Maybe it's because, by the way, I should say this, because I ragged on Detroit for like 3 weeks. Detroit might have been my favorite trip with Chris that we've had. Like Vegas was really fun. Vegas was very fun. Atlanta was great. Atlanta was the bonding experience that we were looking for. But Detroit was like chill. We like walked around Detroit. We went to Captain Jay's. Oh yeah,
where we were undercover cop, looked like undercover cops there. Yeah.
Hey, the food was great. Sprinkle a little bit of it. We had a really great barbecue experience at this barbecue place that we kind of like stumbled upon in Greektown. We got Buffalo Wild Wings, and if you know me very well, there's like only 3 things I really like to go out of my way to eat: Greek salad, tacos, and chicken parm. And then my 4th, where I can be versatile. It's the one place that I can be versatile, no matter where it is. Wings. So, I guess those are the 4 things that like I mainly eat. But anyway, I need to change my diet. Anyway, it was fun. The flight wasn't really a hassle. I got to read my Dave Grohl book. Things were good. I should give shouts to Detroit. They're downtown. We went to a Pistons game. I thought the Little Caesars Arena was pretty cool. It's also where the Red Wings play.
Saw Kate Cunningham too for his first game. That was special.
It was a grand old time, as they say. But anyway, Eagles 24, Chargers 23. Detroit's a fine place. Also, really cheap travel. I do have to shout out Chris for being the only person I know who adores talking to Uber drivers.
No, not this story.
I won't tell the whole story. I'll save it. I tell you what, if the Eagles win, I will tell you the entire story. I'll treat you to that. Deal?
All right.
So, for Chris... Oh, yeah, so I totally forgot about the plugs. Oh, man. Okay, so Eagles Extra, NJ.com/text. You'll get breaking news sent to your phone before it even hits social media. You'll get all the exclusive information that I shared here today on the podcast before it hits the airways about Fletcher Cox and Andre Dillard. That all went to Eagles Extra several minutes before it was published or reported on social media or online. Chris and I are going to start doing our draft breakdowns and mock drafts. We're going to be focusing heavily, obviously, on the first round. You'll get exclusive analysis from both of us in the middle of the game. You can text us your questions and we'll get back to you. We'll respond straight to your phone. Also, make sure to download the No Huddle Show, download and subscribe, the No Huddle Show podcast, wherever you get your podcast. Chris and I love your feedback. We love your ratings, even the negative ones, but don't send those because, every time somebody sends a negative rating, somebody in Detroit gets lost.
Jeez.
Wow. Well, we got lost. I couldn't find where that Buffalo Wild Wings was. We aimlessly got lost downtown trying to find food. And it was a cool downtown area too. Like it was fun scenery, but like I had no idea where the hell we were at one point. People get lost.
The alleyway that we were coming out of Ford Field too. That was a fun.
I couldn't figure out where we were, and then we stopped in like a weird section right before the casino where it was like, do we turn left? Do we turn right? Anyway, it was a confusing city. But the point is, you should go to Detroit, have fun. It's very cheap to get there. Very good casinos. Anyway, for Chris, I'm Mike. We'll talk to you soon.
Hey guys, it's Chris. Just want to give you guys an update on some news that we talked about earlier in the podcast. On Thursday afternoon, the Houston Texans claimed Eric Wilson off of waivers. So the Texans are going to take that contract that the Eagles have, and Eric Wilson's now a Texan, and the Eagles will move on with Davion Taylor, Sean Bradley, and the rest of the linebackers. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
Hello, I'm Danny Pellegrino, and I host the Everything Iconic podcast. If you're into reality TV and pop culture, subscribe to Everything Iconic, where I break down all of your favorite Bravo shows like The Real Housewives and Vanderpump Rules. I interview celebrity guests and take a bunch of detours along the way. Everyone from Cameron Diaz, Rosie O'Donnell, Daniel Levy, Andy Cohen, Katie Couric, and even Queen icon legend Miss Piggy have stopped by, so you'll never want to miss an episode. You could find me on social media at Danny Pellegrino and subscribe to Everything Iconic with Danny Pellegrino, the show with over 23 million downloads on Acast or wherever you get your podcasts.